If you've been on the internet in the last couple of days, you might have seen the uproar over Chinese manufacturers saying that, Hermes is made in a Chinese factory the same way as like DHgate and all these counterfeits and things like that. And I addressed this specific topic on TikTok, Instagram, Substack, so I won't rehash it here on YouTube. But I do want to talk about the role that luxury goods play in the upper class, including the concept of quiet luxury and what that means for you if you're navigating these spaces. So the first topic is taste is always going to beat brands. However, most people don't have taste. So naturally, they are leaning on these designer brands very heavily to kind of bridge that gap. And so they seem very fashionable, or they look, wealthy, or whatever the case may be, without actually knowing how to properly style themselves or pick out pieces. And one of the things that I did talk about in the other platforms is that most of these people who are heavily into designer brands tend to shop at the front of the store. It's the, Louis Vuitton never full that everybody already knows about. It doesn't require any taste. And so your best bet is to actually cultivate personal style and understand how clothes work rather than just relying blindly on brands. And even for wealthy people who do buy these brands, because of course people buy these things, they actually have loyalty to a handful of brands. So for example, people always talk about the Birkin. The Birkin is only offered after you have reached a certain level in the ecosystem within Hermes. So people are investing very heavily into specific brands, a couple of brands, and that is why, they might have a lot of designer goods, but it's not like they're just randomly shopping a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here. And of course, once you are shopping that much, there are all these additional benefits and things that you get from that, which are also very appealing, which is why none of the people who are actually buying these goods are crying and whining about whatever is going on TikTok right now. Now, what you will also see is, like I said, people are picking these very specific brands that they like and that they'll really get into that ecosystem. So like for me, it's Ralph Lauren. I have a ton of Ralph Lauren stuff, but I don't really care as much about the other brands. That also kind of brings us into quiet luxury and what that actually means. Quiet luxury is not going to be Loro Piana and the Row. That was a great marketing campaign for them because that's very easy to tell your average person like, oh yeah, Loro Piana is quiet luxury, because guess what? You can see that. You can go, there are storefronts for Loro Piana that is very accessible in a way. So it makes it an easy topic to talk about. But the true quiet luxury is when you are probably looking at the brand and you have no clue what you are looking at because it's an extremely niche brand. It might also be something that is custom made, that's from some little mom and pop shop that you wouldn't even think to visit, that's sitting there for years and centuries, have been making these custom goods or whatever the case may be. It also might be vintage goods and products as well. A lot of people underestimate the value of vintage in a lot of these upper class spaces, because it's very cool to have something that's like, oh, it was only made in 1963 and it'll never be made again. There's a lot of prestige behind that. And so it's not so much about going out and getting these specific brands so that you can look the part or whatever. It's really about just knowing how to dress, understanding what good quality fabric looks like, what good quality construction looks like, and taking the time to maybe go and do some thrift shopping, or go and look at some vintage options or things like that. Now, a couple of other things that it means for you is, one, all of the like monogrammed where it's all over the place, like Louis Vuitton, I'm sorry, is just really bad at this. Every single thing that they have is just plastered in the logo. It's tacky. It is. And that's not really necessarily an opinion, but it's actually a well-known strategy in the industry that items with really, really large logos or just plastered all over the place is meant to appeal to a very particular segment of the market. Usually people that are tacky and trying to prove that they can afford whatever the item is. Now, there's also people who are just actually into fashion. I think that's a separate conversation that is its own thing. But for the average everyday person, there's no other need for that. You'll find that within any of these designer brands, there's always going to be levels. And a lot of that stuff with all the logos on it is very low level. And so, again, I think, like I said earlier, you want to avoid the big brands and things like that. It's fine to have a little brand. You know, I wear a lot of polos, so they have the horse or the this or the that on it. But it's just being really selective, because just because something is designer does not mean that it's classy. It doesn't mean that it's nice. It doesn't mean that it's high quality. It doesn't mean anything besides it is a designer brand. A lot of my favorite brands are places like Banana Republic, J. Crew's, Suit Supply, Ralph Lauren, Levi's, very like basic, accessible brands, but who make a lot of high quality clothing. And then you can take that to a tailor and have that for years. I have stuff from Ralph Lauren from when I was in middle school that I still wear today. And so understanding that quality is truly always going to be your friend, especially if you don't have a lot of money right now. It is so easy to go and thrift something for $2, take it to a tailor, get it fixed up, made for you for $30. And now for cheaper than you could have gotten something on, you know, Shein or whatever, Express, whatever people shop at these days, you would have had a much better looking wardrobe, and it would have been half the price. So if you're interested in understanding how to present yourself when you're moving in these spaces, I go into depth in this topic. I go more in depth on this topic in the course that I just released. So you can go ahead and check that out. I'll try to put it on the screen, or I'll put it in the description below. But that's going to walk you through, for both men and women, what are the things you should be doing, what are the things you should not be doing, so that you're really well positioned in these spaces. So go ahead and check that out. I also just released a journal, which you can find more about in the description as well. Follow me on Substack. I also just started that as well. And then outside of those three things, which I feel like are little announcements, like, subscribe, share, stay pretentious, and I'll see you next time.